I'm going out, don't act like my husband, Melanie said, grabbing her keys. That was the last thing she said before I helped her into the Uber and watched 3 years dissolve into a single night of lies. I should have known something was different when she spent 2 hours getting ready for what she claimed was just a casual girls' night with her book club friends downtown. I'd been dating Melanie for 3 years, and I thought I knew her routine pretty well. She worked at a Tampa marketing firm, had her circle of friends, and we'd settled into what felt like a comfortable relationship pattern. We lived together in my downtown apartment, split bills reasonably fairly, and I genuinely believed we were building toward something serious. She was smart, driven, and had this infectious laugh that could make even my worst workdays feel manageable. But that Tuesday night felt different from the moment she walked out of the bathroom wearing a black party dress I'd never seen before. She'd been getting ready since 5 o'clock, which seemed excessive for book club, but when I mentioned it, she snapped that I didn't understand how important it was to look presentable when networking with professional women. Fair enough, I thought. Her career mattered to her, and if looking good helped her feel confident, I wasn't going to complain. But then I noticed she was wearing the expensive lingerie set I'd bought her for her birthday last month, the kind of intricate lace and silk that seemed like overkill for an evening discussing literary themes with Susan and Jennifer from her office. The texts started coming around 7:30 while she was doing her makeup. Her phone kept buzzing on the bathroom counter, and I could see her rushing to check each message, sometimes responding immediately with what looked like longer messages than usual. When I asked who was texting so much, she said it was just the group coordinating timing and location details, but something about her tone felt rehearsed. I'd seen her text her actual female friends before, and it usually involved a lot less urgency and a lot fewer butterflies dancing across her face. Then came the makeup bag. Not her usual everyday makeup bag, but the large black case she typically reserved for special occasions like weddings or formal work events. She packed it with enough supplies to last a weekend, including foundation shades, contouring palettes, and 3 different lipstick options. When I asked why she needed so much makeup for a casual evening out, she explained that they might end up at some trendy spots downtown where photos were inevitable, and she wanted to look her best for social media. It sounded reasonable enough, but combined with everything else, it felt like she was preparing for something more elaborate than book discussion and wine. At 8:45, she kissed me goodbye while scrolling through her phone, promising to be home whenever she felt like it and specifically instructing me not to call or text her throughout the evening. She said her book club friends found possessive boyfriends annoying, and she wanted to enjoy herself without having to check in every hour like some teenager with helicopter parents. I helped her into the Uber, told her to have fun, and watched the car disappear into Tampa traffic while she was already typing another message to someone. The whole thing felt choreographed, like she'd been planning this specific evening for weeks rather than days. Even her goodbye felt performative, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me that this was just an innocent night out with female friends. But the overnight makeup bag, the expensive lingerie, the constant texting, and her defensive attitude about my perfectly reasonable questions painted a picture that had nothing to do with book clubs or professional networking. I went back upstairs to our apartment, poured myself a beer, and settled in for what I assumed would be a quiet evening watching Netflix and catching up on some work emails. The apartment felt unusually quiet without her constant phone notifications and television commentary. I tried to shake off the nagging feeling that something wasn't adding up about her evening plans, telling myself I was being paranoid and possessive exactly like she'd accused me of being. I had no idea that within 3 hours, I'd have photographic proof of her deception, and that her innocent girls' night would become the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge I'd ever executed. At 9:47, my phone buzzed with a Snapchat notification from Carlos, my gym buddy who worked downtown security and knew most of the popular rooftop spots. I opened it expecting some random meme or workout video, but instead found myself staring at a 10-second clip that made my stomach drop. There was Melanie, slow dancing with some tall guy in an expensive suit at Sky Bar, one of Tampa's most exclusive rooftop lounges. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, his hands resting possessively on her lower back, and they were swaying to music with the kind of intimacy that had nothing to do with book clubs or professional networking. The guy was definitely Grant Morrison, someone I recognized from her work events but had never paid much attention to. He was older, probably mid-30s, with the kind of polished confidence that came from money and success. More importantly, he was definitely not Susan or Jennifer from her book club, and this was definitely not the casual group hangout she described. Carlos had added a caption that simply said, "Thought you should know, bro," with a location tag showing they were at the most romantic spot in downtown Tampa. I watched the video 3 times, taking screenshot after screenshot, my mind racing through every lie she'd told me over the past few hours. Book club became romantic date. Girls' night became cheating. Professional networking became emotional affair. The expensive lingerie, the overnight makeup bag, the defensive attitude about my questions, and her specific instructions not to contact her throughout the evenings suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't been planning a night out with friends. She'd been planning a betrayal. Within 10 minutes, I'd opened my laptop and begun systematically changing every password we shared. Netflix account that she used daily for her reality show binges. Spotify Premium that she relied on for her workout playlists and commute music. Amazon Prime that she used for everything from groceries to impulse purchases. Our shared bank account that I'd foolishly given her access to 6 months ago when she needed help with rent. Every streaming service, every shared digital account, every piece of online infrastructure that made her life convenient and comfortable. I moved methodically, like I was conducting a business audit rather than dismantling a relationship. Changed passwords, updated security questions, removed her access to everything while documenting timestamps and taking screenshots for my own records. Not because I planned to involve lawyers, but because I wanted a clear timeline of exactly when I discovered her deception and exactly when I decided to stop being her doormat. The whole process took about 30 minutes, and by 10:20, she was effectively locked out of everything digital that mattered to her daily routine. But password changes felt insufficient for the level of betrayal I'd witnessed. She'd specifically told me not to act like her husband, so I decided to show her exactly what that looked like. No husband would sit home quietly while his wife cheated. But a casual roommate might not even notice if she stayed out all night with another man. If she wanted to be treated like a single woman, I could definitely arrange that experience for her. That's when I remembered Isabel Cruz, Melanie's college sorority rival who she constantly described as desperate, attention-seeking, and pathetically single. According to Melanie, Isabel was everything wrong with modern women. Someone who posted too many selfies, flirted with everyone, and never maintained a serious relationship because she was too needy and dramatic. Perfect. I found Isabel's Instagram, sent her a direct message explaining that Melanie was out cheating and I wanted to throw an impromptu girls' night at our apartment. Would she be interested in hosting the kind of female bonding experience that Melanie was supposedly enjoying downtown? Isabel's response came back within 5 minutes. And it was enthusiastic beyond my expectations. She'd apparently been waiting years for an opportunity to get back at Melanie for sorority drama involving stolen boyfriends and social humiliation. She could bring 3 friends, they had wine and face mask supplies, and they were thrilled to take over Melanie's apartment while she was busy destroying her own relationship. Isabel promised they'd make it Instagram-worthy and ensure that Melanie's betrayal had immediate social consequences. By 10:45, I had a plan that felt both proportional and poetic. Melanie wanted to spend her evening with another man at an expensive rooftop bar, pretending to be single and available. Meanwhile, her nemesis would be hosting the ultimate girls' night in her living room, using her skincare products, drinking her wine, and posting social media content that would make it clear to everyone exactly what kind of woman Melanie really was. The irony was perfect. Isabel arrived at 11:15 with 3 sorority sisters, all carrying overnight bags like they were planning a weekend retreat. They brought premium face masks, expensive champagne, and enough social media enthusiasm to document every moment of their takeover. I gave them a quick tour, pointed out Melanie's skincare collection and wine selection, then retreated to my bedroom to let them transform the space into their Instagram paradise. Within 30 minutes, they'd reimagined my living room into the ultimate female bonding headquarters. Melanie's expensive Korean face masks were distributed among the group, her signature vanilla candles were lit throughout the apartment, and her collection of organic wine was being poured into crystal glasses she'd insisted we buy for entertaining. Isabel claimed the master bathroom, setting up a spa station using Melanie's premium skincare products, including that $90 serum she'd splurged on last month. The social media documentation was ruthless and perfectly executed. Isabel posed in Melanie's silk robe, captioning the photo with, "Thanks for letting me borrow this gorgeous apartment for girls' night." Her friends took group selfies in the kitchen using Melanie's coffee machine, tagged the location as my downtown address, and included hashtags that would ensure maximum visibility among our mutual social circles. The masterstroke was Isabel applying Melanie's signature red lipstick, the expensive Tom Ford shade that cost more than most people spend on groceries, and using it for glamorous bathroom mirror selfies. She tagged Melanie in every post, ensuring anyone following either of them would see exactly where Isabel was spending her evening. The passive-aggressive caption read, "Sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need when you need it most." I watched from my bedroom as they settled into genuinely fun female bonding. They weren't just there for revenge, they were actually enjoying themselves, creating the kind of authentic friendship content that Melanie's carefully curated social media presence always lacked. While Melanie was out destroying her relationship for a man who probably wouldn't remember her name next week, her nemesis was building real connections in her own living space. The wine flowed freely, specifically Melanie's prized collection from that Napa trip we'd taken 6 months ago. Isabel photographed each bottle, creating Instagram stories that showed the labels and vintage years, effectively documenting whose wine collection was being enjoyed. They used Melanie's expensive cheese board, imported crackers, and even that artisanal honey she'd bought for $40 and refused to let me touch. Around midnight, Isabel updated me on their progress and showed me the social media response. Melanie's friends were commenting with confused questions about why Isabel was at my apartment, where Melanie was, and what exactly was happening. Some asked directly if Melanie knew about this gathering, while others made passive-aggressive comments about uninvited guests and boundary violations. The evening felt like poetic justice in real time. Melanie had told me not to act like her husband, so I wasn't. Instead, I was treating her like the casual roommate she'd implied she wanted me to be. Casual roommates don't monitor each other's whereabouts or prevent friends from using the apartment when the other person isn't home. By 1 in the morning, they'd created a social media narrative that would be impossible for Melanie to explain away. At 12:43 in the morning, my Ring doorbell chimed and I watched as Melanie stumbled out of an Uber, clearly intoxicated and visibly distressed. Her romantic evening had apparently ended earlier than planned, probably when Grant realized she expected more commitment than he was willing to offer. She found her spare key snapped cleanly in half, with a note that read, "Ring the doorbell." I watched as confusion flickered across her face, followed by dawning realization that her deception might have been discovered. Isabel answered the door wearing Melanie's silk pajama set. Through the Ring camera audio, I could hear Isabel's sweet voice explaining that there had been password changes throughout the evening, and perhaps Melanie should have arranged alternative accommodations. Melanie's confusion quickly escalated to fury as she processed what she was seeing. Her college nemesis was wearing her clothes in her apartment, clearly having spent hours using her belongings while she was out cheating. The realization that her affair had been discovered and turned into entertainment for the person she despised most was visibly crushing. I watched Melanie demand entry, only to be calmly informed by Isabel that the lease was in my name, passwords had been changed, and perhaps she should contact me directly. Isabel's tone was reasonable, which made Melanie's increasingly hysterical responses look even more unhinged. The neighbors began opening their doors as Melanie's voice rose to levels that violated every noise ordinance. Mrs. Rodriguez emerged asking if everything was okay. Mr. Patterson peeked out documenting the disruption. Melanie was creating a public scene. Isabel handled the situation with grace, apologizing to neighbors and explaining there seemed to be confusion about living arrangements. Meanwhile, Melanie continued escalating, demanding that someone force Isabel to let her into her apartment. The irony was that Melanie couldn't explain why she was returning home at 1 in the morning from a girls' night that had supposedly ended hours earlier. She was trapped in her own web of lies, unable to play the victim without admitting to being the perpetrator. Isabel closed the door gently, leaving Melanie standing in the hallway holding her broken spare key, surrounded by neighbors who had witnessed her complete breakdown. The following hours turned into a masterclass in damage control that only made everything worse for Melanie. I watched through my Ring camera as she alternated between sleeping in her car, banging on random windows, and calling everyone from my sister to apartment management demanding they force entry for her. The parking garage security footage showed her pacing around her BMW like a caged animal, occasionally stopping to check her phone and send increasingly desperate messages. At 3 in the morning, she tried calling the police, claiming she was being illegally evicted. I could hear her through the Ring camera audio explaining to the dispatcher that her abusive boyfriend had changed the locks and was preventing her from accessing her belongings. The responding officers arrived within 20 minutes, took one look at the lease agreement I provided through Isabel, and informed Melanie that this was a civil matter between roommates, not a criminal issue. Meanwhile, Isabel had made herself completely at home, brewing coffee using Melanie's expensive French press and posting Instagram stories that showed her making breakfast with organic ingredients from Melanie's carefully curated pantry. She even used Melanie's monogrammed coffee mug, taking a selfie with the caption about unexpected sleepovers and new friendships. The passive-aggressive brilliance was devastating, and I could see comments rolling in from mutual friends asking pointed questions about where Melanie was. By 6 in the morning, Melanie had created her own Instagram story attempting to control the narrative, posting a selfie from her car with some vague caption about being locked out by a controlling partner who couldn't handle her independence. But the timeline made no sense, and her friends were already commenting with confusion about why she wasn't at the girls' night happening without her. The real entertainment began when Melanie started reaching out to our mutual friends, trying to build support for her version of events. She called Jake Martinez, my gym buddy, at 7 in the morning, apparently hoping to get him to pressure me into letting her back into the apartment. Jake texted me screenshots of her messages, which claimed I had become violently jealous and possessive, trapping her outside as punishment for having female friendships. The problem was that Jake had already seen Carlos's Snapchat video of her romantic date with Grant. She tried the same approach with my sister Emma, calling her multiple times and leaving voicemails that painted me as an emotionally abusive partner. Emma forwarded me the messages, along with her own commentary about how pathetic it was to lie about cheating and then play the victim when facing consequences. Each lie only made her look more desperate and untrustworthy to people who were already questioning her version of events. Isabel's continued presence was the real stroke of genius that made Melanie's narrative impossible to maintain. She posted Instagram content throughout the morning showing herself making mimosas with Melanie's premium champagne, using the expensive face masks, and doing yoga while wearing Melanie's designer athletic wear. The hashtags were perfect: spontaneous friendships and unexpected opportunities. The breaking point came when Isabel's friends started arriving for day 2 of the Ultimate Girls Weekend. I watched through the Ring camera as Melanie returned to the apartment around noon, having apparently spent the morning regrouping. She found 4 women lounging around her apartment, drinking her wine, using her skincare products, and treating her living space like their personal resort. 2 weeks after the lockout incident, I was consulting with lawyers while Melanie had moved in with her mother and was attempting to claim emotional abuse and illegal eviction. The consultation was straightforward. As the sole leaseholder who paid all utilities, I had every legal right to change passwords and determine access to my residence. Melanie's legal threats evaporated when her attorney explained that claiming domestic abuse while admitting to infidelity would undermine her credibility in court. She had no legal standing to demand housing, especially when caught in an affair with a married coworker. Meanwhile, Melanie's professional reputation was crumbling throughout Tampa's marketing community. Isabel's strategic networking had connected her with competing firms, and word spread quickly that Melanie had been caught cheating and created dramatic public scenes. The real blow came when Melanie lost the Morrison account presentation. Grant had been leveraging their relationship to gain insider information. When their affair became public, Morrison's executives took their account elsewhere entirely. Isabel had leveraged her weekend at my apartment into something much more valuable than revenge. The connections she'd made resulted in 3 job interviews at top-tier marketing firms. But the most unexpected development was the connection that formed between Isabel and me. What started as a strategic alliance evolved into something neither of us had anticipated. Isabel stayed in touch after the weekend, initially to update me on Melanie's damage control, but our conversations gradually shifted to topics unrelated to my ex-girlfriend. We'd started working out together at my CrossFit gym, where Isabel's competitive spirit and dry humor fit perfectly. She was ambitious without being manipulative, confident without being entitled, and chose honesty over convenience. The contrast with Melanie's approach was striking. 3 months after the apartment takeover, Isabel and I were house hunting together, searching for properties that would accommodate our professional goals. We weren't rushing anything dramatic, but we were building something based on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. Meanwhile, Melanie's attempts at reconciliation had become increasingly desperate. She'd shown up at my CrossFit gym several occasions, apparently hoping to create dramatic confrontation. Instead, she'd found Isabel there as my workout partner, looking confident while Melanie tried to explain her presence to people who already knew about her cheating scandal. 10 months later, Isabel and I were house hunting together, excited about finding a place that would accommodate both our ambitions. We weren't rushing anything dramatic, but building something based on compatibility. The final confrontation came at Dave and Lisa's engagement party, where Melanie had decided to make one last attempt at reconciliation. When Melanie approached us, Isabel handled the situation with perfect grace that made my ex-girlfriend's desperation obvious. Rather than engaging in drama, Isabel thanked her for introducing us through her poor choices. Melanie's composure shattered when she realized her betrayal had directly created the healthy relationship she desperately wished she could have. Her attempt to upgrade had resulted in losing everything while I'd found someone better. I watched Melanie cycle through confusion, anger, and finally recognition that she'd thrown away something real. Grant had used her, then discarded her. As Isabel and I walked away, I reflected on how everything had worked out. Melanie's betrayal had freed me from a relationship where I was valued for what I could provide. The story concluded with Melanie watching as Isabel and I laughed together, her loneliness serving as the perfect consequence for someone who'd prioritized momentary thrills over genuine partnership. She'd taught me that not everyone deserves thoughtful love, but led me to someone who treasured those qualities.